Happy Tuesday, and welcome to the Wish You Knew podcast. I'm your host, Karen Bortvet. Thank you so much for tuning in for another week. I have to say, I was blown away last week by two things. One, I finally checked out the analytics as to how many folks are listening, and was amazed at how many of you are tuning in every week. And second, I was blown away by the number of questions that you all sent in for this week's guest, Keith, who is Mormon. There were, in fact, so many questions that this week's episode is going to be divided into two parts, because I wasn't sure if you all would be able to take an episode that was almost 2 hours long. So we'll have part one of the interview with Keith this week, and then part two of that interview will come out next week. If you don't hear your question answered on the show this week, tune in next week because it should be there. I think I had most of the questions answered. First, thanks so much, Keith, for agreeing to be on the podcast.
Yep.
I'm very excited to have you, and I think our listeners are as well, because we have had many, many questions coming in on all kinds of different things.
No, I'm excited about it. I love talking about, I love talk. I'm kind of sad that way.
My very first question for you is about vocabulary, because I want to try to make sure I'm using the correct vocabulary. I have heard Mormon, LDS, member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What should I be saying? What is the difference? Are they the same?
They're all pretty much the same. You get some that are more particular than others, but for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints with its world office in Salt Lake City, the one with the missionaries on the bicycles, non-polygamous practicing sect, it is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the official name, but they understand LDS and Mormon. So we go by three common names, but Mormon or LDS is just as easily accepted as I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's a long way of saying it.
I much prefer shorter ways of saying things, so we'll stick with that. I think you had said that you were raised in the Mormon faith. Was that seen as an option, or was that an imperative? It was just what you would do.
You know, that's a great question. My parents are converts. My mom grew up Catholic. My father grew up Seventh-day Adventist. And my grandfather was a 33rd degree Mason. So we had a very eclectic religious background. When I was born, my parents had already converted to the Mormon faith. They really gave me the opportunity to make my own decision. Yes, I grew up Mormon. Yes, my parents were Mormon. Yes, my brother served Mormon missions. Yes, I went to church every Sunday. I attended the seminary classes that high school students go to. But I didn't commit to the faith to the degree that I am today until I was probably halfway through my mission. I went because it was customary until I was about 17. When I turned 17, I kind of had to make my own decision. And I investigated other churches. I had friends with other churches. Actually, my best friend in high school wasn't even a religious person. It was my choice. My parents did not force it down my throat. So I can say it's my choice, but at the same time, it was a culture that I grew up in. So it was a comfortable acceptance for me to get into.
Is that common among Mormons, that it's flexible and families are open to whichever way their children decide to go, if they want to keep the faith or choose a new faith?
I think with any religion, LDS, Mormon faith included, parents would prefer that their kids follow their steps. I have a daughter right now who's going to a college, and she does not have the same level of commitment as I'd like her to, but we've given her the freedom to make her own choices, because in my house with my wife, we feel that when you force a child into following a specific belief system, that it'll push them away faster than it'll help them accept it. So my wife's family, on the other hand, you were Mormon. There was no other religion. They really did not approve of non-Mormon activities, non-Mormon, traditions. But both her parents were born and raised in the LDS faith. So I think you'll find it's an even split, where a set of parents, I think, again, in any religion, want their children to follow. And you'll find some parents are more persistent, pushing your child into a specific group of beliefs. The LDS faith does teach, as a Catholic would, or a Buddhist, or a Seventh-day Adventist, or a Jehovah's Witness, that our church is the best church, and our church has the most truth, and our church is the right way. And so anybody in the church is taught that. But at the same time, the LDS faith teaches you that you have to make your own choice. You have to pray. You have to ask God to understand if the Book of Mormon is what it claims to be. If you believe that there's prophets, if you believe these things, there's a standard statement in the LDS Church that says, no missionary has ever converted a person. The Spirit converts. The people are just the delivery or the mouthpiece, but the Spirit converts. And so everybody has to make their own choice at the end of the day.
I want to ask you a lot more about a couple of the points you mentioned there, but I want to jump back to the idea of exploring your faith. You said that it's up to the person to commit. One of the listeners asked specifically if the Mormon faith has something like the Mennonites or the Amish, I believe, that they have a time where they go out from the church and decide on their own if they want to remain in the church or not.
That's a great question. It's funny you asked it. I've never been asked that one. No, I've never been introduced to the option of saying, hey, take a couple weeks off, go enjoy life, and then come back. The LDS faith is very strong in consistency. We try to emulate our lives as Christ would. We don't feel that you get to take time off for that. And so no, I don't know of anything in the LDS faith that I've ever been taught or introduced or shared where we can say, yeah, go take some time off from your faith and then come back if you want when you're done.
Another friend had asked something along those same lines. This friend had a different friend who had left the faith because they found it to be too strict. What do you think are some of the rules that may seem very strict to us non-LDS folks?
You can't drink coffee. And I say that the LDS faith teaches us not to do things, but always stresses it's your choice. And so when I hear people say you can't drink coffee, you can't drink tea, you can't drink Coke or Pepsi or Dr. Pepper, it makes me cringe. You can do whatever you want. You choose them, you make your own choices, and you live with your consequences. But with the LDS faith, adult members that are in good standing and fully committed wear garments, which will often dictate how long your shorts have to be, or sleeved shirts versus tank tops. Or we don't play shirts and skins on outdoor games for the men. The Sundays, we don't spend money. A Sunday is a day of rest where we stay home with our families. We don't go to the movies. Again, people do that. So when I say that, it's a general statement. Obviously, people will say, well, I know these Mormons. And yes, there are. Nobody's perfect. But the standard in the church is Sundays is a day of rest, and you don't go out. No, we don't drink coffee. No, we don't drink tea. No, we don't smoke cigarettes or marijuana. And no, we don't drink alcohol. The oddity of the 2-year commitment for a mission. You hear rumors of things about the church, like you guys can't eat meat or things like that are just rumors. And there's much more doctrinal basis behind it. I don't want to waste your time on those things, but, I eat steak often. I drink Dr. Pepper. I drink Mountain Dew. Prefer Dr. Pepper. But, those are some oddities. Can't date till you're 16. Oh, my favorite is high school students. Once they become a freshman in high school or 9th grade, some of that would be middle school, they go to a 1 hour a day religious studies class. In Utah, it's usually there's an LDS building near a high school campus that the high school students that choose to go to. It's called seminary. My 4 oldest kids right now are all attending seminary, or my 3 oldest. My oldest has graduated from high school, so she's out of seminary. But the 3 oldest, they go before school. So they get up at 5:30 in the morning, at seminary by 6:15. They get out by 7:30, and then they go to school for the day.
What do they teach in seminary? I remember we had that at my high school.
It is a 4-year cycle. 1 year focuses on the Book of Mormon. 1 year focuses on the New Testament. 1 year focuses on the Old Testament. And 1 year focuses on what we call the Doctrine and Covenants or Pearl of Great Price, / church history. So it's kind of a combination of things that 4th year.
Okay, now I want to ask about the coffee thing, because that's one thing that often comes up. Why no coffee?
I've heard so many arguments in my life. The bottom line is we believe in a prophet. We believe that the prophet is the mouthpiece of God on the earth at this time. The prophet said, we don't drink coffee. That's why we don't drink coffee. Plain and simple. People will argue because of caffeine, because of tannin acid, because of the way it's made, because of its addictive issues. If that were the case, then you could argue chocolate, or you could argue Dr. Pepper, or you could argue anything. The church has come out and said coffee, tea, tobacco, alcohol, no. Just plain and simple, no.
Just caffeinated tea or all tea?
Tea. Anything that requires a tea leaf. Now, that's my understanding and interpretation. The church doesn't specify caffeine or no caffeine. They just say tea. I have read in some of the manuals that herbal tea is acceptable. But if it requires a tea leaf, like green tea or chamomile tea, well, chamomile's in there. I don't know what chamomile is, but if it's a tea leaf tea, no. If it's herbal tea, yes.
How do you learn the rules if you don't grow up in the faith? How would one know all of these things? there's a lot of different restrictions or different approaches to life than what most of us would think of.
You know, you can ask a Mormon. You can ask the Mormon missionaries. You can go to LDS.org. There's a couple different Mormon websites out there that the church sponsors. I caution people, when you want to know what the LDS faith believes, you go to the LDS sources. You don't go to books that ex-members wrote because they're already jaded. If you want to know what we believe, ask a missionary or go to LDS.org. You can type in whatever you want. You can read talks from 45 years ago, and they'll explain to you what they said back then. That's where you get the doctrine of the church. There's lots of opinions and beliefs and different ideas, but to understand what Mormons believe, ask a Mormon or go to LDS.org.
That's what we're doing right now. Ask a Mormon. If somebody decided that they don't feel that this is the faith that they're being called to, and this is where the Spirit is moving in them, and so they choose to leave, what are they giving up? I've heard stories of people being ostracized from the community after that, or not being able to go to their kids' weddings or different major events. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. Before the age of 18, if you leave the LDS church, you're leaving the group of people. So there is a level of being ostracized. I would agree with that. But I believe that to be the case in any religion. If you're grown up Catholic and you decide you don't like the Catholics, then it's harder to understand the Catholics and want to be around them. So you will, and they will both just kind of separate. Mormon faith is very similar. I have friends that have left the Mormon faith. I don't care that they're out of the church. I care that they're not in the church, but I don't. That doesn't make me stop being their friend. So I don't. But I've seen where people leave the church and now you left a culture. And because you left the culture, it's hard to be a part of the culture you don't believe in. And the LDS faith is a true culture. As for the weddings, if you are not 18 and have done what they call taking out the endowments / gone through the temple and living by the beliefs of the LDS faith, you can't go to the temple wedding. Nobody can. When I got married to my wife, we got sealed in the what we call sealing in the temple down in Los Angeles. I had several friends outside the temple waiting for us to come out. At which point, they were every bit a part of the wedding party that anybody else. They were in all the photos. They went to the luncheon. They were at the reception. They were all part of it. They just did not get to see or be a part of the I do ceremony that happens. And so I've never been to a church activity where people did not welcome non-members. Non-members are always welcome to come to any outdoor LDS activity, indoor LDS activity. The only place that non-Mormons are really restricted access to is the temples. And I've had people talk about where they don't like to go to the Sunday meetings because we wear shirts and ties, we wear dresses versus shorts and t-shirts or dockers and polos, so they feel uncomfortable. But I've gone to church in Levi's and polo because I'm out of town on business, and it's awkward for me even, so I can understand their feeling. But, you know, you're always welcome in a Mormon church. Any given Sunday, if there's people in there, go right in and say hi. They're not going to stop you.
You mentioned shirts and ties and dresses. Are women required to wear dresses, or can they wear pants or slacks?
You know, it's a cultural thing. You can wear whatever you want to church. I've seen women show up in slacks and blouses. I've seen men. There's one guy that goes to my congregation that wears Levi's and a button-down shirt every Sunday. But we go with the belief that we're going to glorify God, and we give him the best that we have to offer. We give him our best foot forward, not, hey, this is what's comfortable, so I'm going to do this because it makes me happy. We feel that when you go to church, it's what you do for God. You give him the best you can. So shirts, ties, and dresses.
In your last answer, you said taken up the endowment. Can you explain what that is, or is that something you can share?
Yeah, no problem. So within the LDS faith, there's 4 major times in the life of a Mormon. First is your baptism. Second is a confirmation, when you become a member of the church. Third is if they're men, it's receiving the priesthood. And the fourth would be taking out your endowment. What that means is when you've gone to the LDS temple, you go to the temple and you're taught about the creation of the world. There are no sacrifices in the temples, by the way. So if anybody asks that, no, there's no sacrifice. You go to the temple and you're taught about the creation of the world. You're taught about how much God loves you. You commit your life to supporting God and the LDS faith, to live chaste and to be the best person that you can.